A team's success or demise is usually decided before the season even starts. The offseason is the time to strengthen rosters and coaching staffs, but some teams just ruin themselves for years to come. Franchises throw draft picks down the toilet, trade away Hall of Famers for peanuts, and worse, there is a team that took a Hall of Fame career and ripped it to shreds. This is the gridiron. Stop me if you've heard this one before. The Chicago Bears need a quarterback. It's true now, and it was true in 2017. The Bears are the only NFL franchise to never have a quarterback throw for 4,000 yards in a season. In 2017, the Bears saw their guy, but they were worried he was out of reach. So the Bears struck up a trade with the 49ers. They moved from the 3rd pick to the 2nd. That was it. One spot. Because they wanted to make sure they got Mitch Trubisky. What did they give up? In addition to swapping their 3rd pick for the 2nd, they gave San Francisco a 3rd rounder and a 4th rounder in that year's draft, as well as their 3rd round pick in the 2018 draft, which ended up being Fred Warner, one of the best linebackers in the league today. The Bears got their guy, Mitch Trubisky. He was going to bring them out of the dark ages, right? Wrong. The Bears have already moved on from him to Justin Fields. Trubisky had a decent start to his career and made the Pro Bowl in his 2nd year. But it was all downhill from there. He proved not to be the franchise guy. What's worse, in that 2017 draft, they could have drafted Patrick Mahomes. They missed out on elite talent, wasted good picks to get the wrong guy, and are still stuck in a vicious cycle of franchise-ruining decisions. But at least Trubisky played some games for them, unlike this next player. The Bears mortgaged their future to get a guy who was a 4-star Airbnb, but the Raiders sold their house for a weekend stay at Hotel Antonio Brown. At the time, Brown had been having a stellar 9-year career in Pittsburgh. 7 Pro Bowl appearances, 2 years leading the league in receptions, 2 years leading the league in receiving yards, and he just led the league with 15 receiving touchdowns in 2018. So why were the Steelers so ready to get rid of him? Well, in Week 17 of the 2018 season, he and Ben Roethlisberger had gotten into an argument at practice, and Brown skipped practice the rest of the week. His relationship with the Steelers was souring, and the Steelers are a loyal and stable organization. They've had only 3 head coaches over the last 55 years. So they don't just move on from people, including elite Pro Bowlers. Was Brown really such a loose cannon? Yep. The Raiders traded a 3rd round and 5th round pick in the 2019 draft for Brown. That 3rd round pick, number 66 overall, the Steelers turned into Deontay Johnson. Also, Terry McLaurin was still on the board at that point if the Raiders really wanted a wide receiver. But they now had the Pro Bowler Antonio Brown, who soon gave his own feet frostbite during cryotherapy treatment and missed most of training camp, threatened to retire when the league wouldn't allow him to keep wearing a helmet band for safety reasons, was fined $54,000 for missing team meetings, which led to a confrontation with Raiders GM Mike Mayock, where he also threatened to hit him, and then demanded to be released by the Raiders, which he was. AB never played a single down for the Raiders. But was that the worst move by the franchise ever? No, we'll get to that later. Next up is a team that actually opted out of acquiring a Hall of Famer to instead acquire someone who was barely above average. Dante Co Peppers' 7 years in Minnesota saw him go to the Pro Bowl 3 times. In 2004, he passed for more yards than anyone else in the league. But in 2005, his play dipped. He and the Vikings started 0-2. He had 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and 2 fumbles. Though he rebounded, the rebound didn't last long. In the 7th game of the season, he suffered a major knee injury and went on injured reserve. The Vikings were 2-5, and he had thrown 6 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and lost 5 fumbles. Culpepper and the Vikings were ready to part ways. Another quarterback out west was also ready to part ways with his team, Drew Brees and the San Diego Chargers. The Miami Dolphins were looking at both of these prospects in 2006. Culpepper was recovering from his knee injury, and Brees was recovering from shoulder surgery. The Dolphins were originally more interested in Brees, but wanted him to lower his contract demands. He hadn't yet, and rather than wait for Brees to negotiate, the Dolphins chose Culpepper. Culpepper went 1-3 in his first 4 games with the Dolphins, including that 4th game where they lost to the Houston Texans and their last-ranked defense. Culpepper threw 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in that short span, and then, due to nagging injuries, sat the rest of the season and never played for the Dolphins again. Meanwhile, Miami fans with a strong pair of binoculars could see across the Gulf of Mexico at what could have been Drew Brees in New Orleans, lighting it up. That very year, 2006, Brees was a Pro Bowler and led the league in passing yards. The rest of his career is well known. 11 more Pro Bowls, 6 more times leading the league in passing, and that Super Bowl win. What could have been. But teams don't just make mistakes with players, they make mistakes with coaches too. Big mistakes. Although the New England Patriots have made many sneaky good moves over the last couple decades, Bill Belichick made a terrible error in 2022. He didn't name anyone as his offensive coordinator. He decided to have Matt Patricia serve as the offensive play caller and Joe Judge be the quarterback's coach. Those names might sound familiar. Matt Patricia saw a lot of success as the Patriots' defensive coordinator. Defensive coordinator. Joe Judge used to be the Patriots' special teams coordinator. Special teams coordinator. You should notice the heavy emphasis on the fact that they were not offensive guys. They both previously had head coaching jobs too. Patricia coached the Lions and achieved a 13-29-1 record before getting fired. Judge had his coaching job with the Giants, achieving a 10-23 record before getting fired. So why did Belichick think the defense-oriented Patricia and the special teams-oriented Judge could run an offense together after both failing as head coaches? That year, the offense ended up being garbage, and after seeing some success as a rookie, Mac Jones was put in a terrible position, and now it looks like he's lost. The Patriots took their promising QB, broke him, watched him worsen in 2023, and dropped themselves to one of the worst teams in the entire league. The dynasty days are certainly over. Not to worry, Pats fans, you can always relive the glory days of when the terrible offseason moves by other teams made them better. Miami had Wes Welker on their team back when Culpepper was there, and that 2006 season was Welker's best, even amidst all the quarterback changes. He had 67 receptions for 687 yards and 1 touchdown. Nothing special. The Dolphins didn't see value in the 5'9" slight-framed slot receiver, so they traded him away for just a 2nd round and 7th round pick to their division rival. The Patriots snagged Welker and immediately put him to use. The Dolphins didn't know how to unlock his full potential. The Pats clearly did, because that next season, Welker led the league with 112 receptions. He also contributed 1,175 yards and 8 touchdowns to that legendary 16-0 2007 Patriots team. Welker went on to have 5 Pro Bowl years with the Pats and 2 more years leading the league in receptions. Welker was a key part of the Pats' legendary offense. The Dolphins traded him away for peanuts. Even worse, to their division rival. But the Dolphins were only one of the teams to blame for helping create that dominant offense. Randy Moss. One of the biggest offseason acquisitions ever was New England getting Randy Moss. It was also probably the worst move by the Raiders organization. Moss tore the league up in Minnesota. Funny enough, playing a lot of time with Culpepper. 3 separate seasons with the Vikings, Moss led the league in touchdown grabs. The Raiders were excited to add him to the team in 2005, but it just didn't look the same. In 2005 and 2006, Moss had a total of 11 touchdown catches, which he usually did in one season. In each year with Oakland, Moss's targets were more than double his receptions, something that had never happened before in his career. That meant that he wasn't catching more than half the balls thrown his way. People thought he was washed. When Belichick called, the Raiders answered, and they took nothing more than a 4th round pick in exchange for Moss. What? Trading away a Hall of Famer for that? That very next year was the famous one when Moss broke the record for receiving touchdowns with 23. Yes, that 16-0 Patriots season. The league had the Giants to thank for stopping them, but the league sure didn't thank the Dolphins or the Raiders for helping build that offense. The Raiders just have no luck with receivers, or Hall of Famers. But at least they didn't take a Hall of Fame career and dismantle it like our next team. Russell Wilson. The Denver Broncos had a championship-caliber defense and great offensive pieces. They were one quarterback away from being a contender. They'd been looking for one ever since Peyton Manning, and they zeroed in on Russell Wilson. There were signs that his performance was on a downward trajectory, and the fact that the Seahawks were willing to trade him away should have raised a slight red flag. Maybe the Seahawks were happy with what they got in return? The Broncos got Russell Wilson and a fourth-round pick. The Seahawks got Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, and 5 picks, 2 being first-rounders. Denver was happy to get their elite 33-year-old quarterback. But was he still that good? Or was he mostly carried by that stellar Seattle defense? The Broncos gave Danger Russ a $245 million 5-year deal. What Russell Wilson did in return was struggle. They started 2-4 and only cleared 20 points once in that span. Russ was allergic to the end zone. A running joke became, could he throw more touchdown passes in the season than the number of bathrooms he had in his mansion? 12 bathrooms. Even through week 14, he still hadn't cleared the mark. He finished the season with 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and he was 4-11 in his 15 games. The 2023 season wasn't much better. The Broncos brought in Sean Payton, who didn't gel with Russ. There was so much drama around the team. They were a mess, even letting up 70 points to Miami. The elite Russell Wilson was benched for Jarrett Stidham late in the year, which was Denver's final nail in the coffin for Wilson's Hall of Fame chances. Unless Russ can go somewhere and resurrect his career, the Broncos just dismantled it while also setting themselves back several years. Worst offseason move in NFL history? Going down and taking someone else's Hall of Fame career with you? That'll do it. Just goes to show that even billion-dollar franchises make serious mistakes.